You think you do everything for your family. You work, you stay up all night with sick kids, you sit in stuffy auditoriums for school plays where they have exactly one line. You juggle daycare, school, college tuition, and you tell yourself your children will grow up loving you for it. Then, one day, you wake up at 60 and realize you're completely alone, and your children don't actually care who you are beyond what you can provide. And on top of all that, my son and my daughter decided to have a joint wedding. One big couples wedding, as they kept calling it. 2 couples, one giant event, 300 guests, enough money blown on flowers to feed a small town. I got along more or less okay with my son's fiancé and my daughter's fiancé. Nothing special, but polite. Their mothers, they hated me. Openly, quietly, constantly. And they did everything they could to turn my kids against me. So it's the wedding day. Huge banquet hall in a fancy hotel in Austin. White drapes everywhere, crystal chandeliers, the whole 9 yards. I walk in holding my little clutch, wearing the dress my daughter said was fine, just don't be too flashy, and I look for the seating chart. They show me my seat, between the kitchen entrance and the restrooms. Literally the table where the servers were staging trays. Of course I think it's a mistake. I go over to my son first. He's laughing with his groomsmen, tie already loosened, drink in his hand. "Jason, honey," I say, "they've put me at the wrong table. I'm over by the kitchen." He barely glances at me. "Mom, I'm busy. Talk to the planner." He waves me off, like I'm a stranger trying to sell him something. That little sting, it should have warned me. It didn't. So I step into a quiet corner and call my daughter. She picks up on the second ring, music booming behind her. They seated me in the wrong place. I'm at the back, by the restrooms. I'm supposed to be up front with family." She's quiet for half a second. Then she says, completely calm, "No, Mom, that's right. My mother-in-law will be sitting next to us." I laugh, because surely I misheard. "What about me?" I ask. "I'm your mother." You know what she says? "You see, priorities change. They're rich and can give us much more than you. You're just a pensioner and they own companies, so you sit next to the servants." And she hung up. If you think I was stunned, you're wrong. I was on the verge of a full-blown nervous breakdown. But underneath the shaking and the nausea, something finally clicked into place. I finally understood exactly how my kids saw me. Not as their mother, as trash. Well, fine. I walked back to that little table near the toilet, sat down for a second, opened my clutch, pulled out 2 envelopes with gift checks I'd written for my children, and tore them into neat little scraps. Tiny white confetti on that ugly banquet chair. 2 checks for $1 million each. A simple pensioner who spent 40 years working her butt off teaching high school math, living below her means, studying the stock market in the evenings while other people watched reality TV. A woman who saved every spare dollar of her paycheck, maxed out her 401k, bought boring index funds and held them through every panic. I am now worth around $10 million. My kids had no idea. And my dear co-mothers-in-law, oh, I know they helped turn my kids against me. I have the texts. I have the little comments. I have the way my kids' voices changed after every Sunday brunch at their houses. They'd pay for that. Not with fists. Not with screaming. With something that hurts people like them far more. Loss of money. Loss of status. Loss of comfort. You want to know how? Sit back. I'll tell you. I'm 60 years old. My name is Linda. I live just outside Austin in a modest 3-bedroom house I bought back in the late 90s when housing prices were still vaguely sane. I taught math for 35 years at the local public high school, the kind of teacher everyone forgets until they have to calculate a tip. My late husband, Mark, was an electrician, good man, steady worker, dropped dead of a heart attack at 54 in our driveway holding a bag of groceries. We'd planned for retirement together. Life had other ideas. I raised our kids mostly on my salary and his union pension. Jason is 32, Emily is 30. Both smart, both went to college. We didn't have much, but they always had what they needed. Piano lessons, soccer, AP exam fees, prom dresses. I clipped coupons and drove a car older than some of my students, but my kids never went without. They lived in better clothes than I did. They ate better food. They had brand name sneakers while I shopped clearance racks. I told myself that was what mothers did. I didn't grow up with money. My parents spent everything the minute it touched their hands. When I started teaching, one of the older teachers took me aside and told me, "Linda, you let compounding work for you, not against you. Pay off debt, buy boring index funds, don't touch them." So I did. I maxed out my 401k every year. I opened a Roth IRA. I lived on maybe 60% of my income. After Mark died, I rolled over his accounts, took the life insurance, and invested that too. I never told the kids numbers, just, "I'll be okay." To them, I was just their tired middle-class mom in the old Corolla with the squeaky fan belt. Then college happened. Jason went to UT Austin, met Lauren. Her parents, the Bentleys, own a chain of car dealerships and some real estate. Big house in Westlake, expensive cars, ski trips. Lauren is perfectly nice to your face with that glossy, polished way rich people have when they talk to service staff. Her mother, Diane, she's the sort of woman who calls herself blunt and honest as an excuse to be cruel. Then there's Emily. She went out of state on a partial scholarship, met Mark Jr. His parents, the Carsons, own a dental group. They're in all the strip malls in half the counties around here. His mother, Patricia, is Southern sweet tea poison. Big cross necklace, bigger bank account, and a smile that never reaches her eyes. The first time I met both couples together was Thanksgiving 3 years ago. I had Jason and Emily home, and they wanted to blend families. So, of course, I said yes. Diane looked around my house, smiled, and said, "Oh, this is so cozy." We kept our starter home, too, for the staff. Patricia made a point of asking Jason and Emily right in front of me if they needed help with real furniture or if they were still using the hand-me-down stuff from your childhood. Little digs, tiny cuts, death by 1,000 snobs. But the kids laughed them off. "Oh, Mom, they don't mean anything by it. They're just like that." I started noticing things. Texts to my daughter that went unanswered for days, then suddenly, "Sorry, Mom, I've just been so busy with Mark's family. They're helping us with investments. They're really good with money." Calls to my son that got cut short. "Mom, can I call you back? We're at Lauren's lake house and the signal sucks." When wedding talk started, it seemed innocent. Jason proposed first, then 6 months later, Mark proposed to Emily. Everyone joked about how close it was. Diane thought it was such a cute idea for them to have a joint wedding. Patricia called it efficient. I heard cheaper. I offered to help with costs. I told them I could comfortably contribute, didn't give numbers, but I said I can cover some big items if that takes stress off you. Diane waved her manicured hand. "Oh, nonsense. We've got the wedding handled, sweetheart. You're on a teacher's pension. You just enjoy the day." Teacher's pension, like it was a punchline. Fine, I thought. Keep your assumptions. I decided then I'd give my kids large gifts quietly instead of paying vendors. Old school checks and cards, something private between us. As the planning went on, I started to see how the lines were being drawn. There was a group chat for wedding stuff. Slowly, I noticed I wasn't on all of them. Jason would mention something, and when I said, "I didn't know that," he'd say, "It was in the chat, Mom," then frown when I said I never saw it. One night, Emily accidentally sent a screenshot to the wrong chat. I saw it before she deleted it. It was Diane saying, "Honestly, Em, your mom means well, but she's not on our level. It's your big day. You don't want her small town taste ruining your photos." Patricia replied, "Exactly. Bless her heart, but she doesn't understand this world. Let us handle the important stuff. You can't let guilt drag you down." Then Emily's reply, "You're right. I feel bad, but Mom is so dramatic. She'll get over it." I sat at my kitchen table and stared at my phone for a long time. I didn't confront her. I should have, maybe. Instead, I tucked the hurt away. I'd spent 30 years thinking my kids knew me. Turns out they'd bought into the act those women had been selling. that I was some fragile, broke, clingy little mom with no real value. Rehearsal night was my next warning sign. There was a schedule for speeches. Welcome toast, best man, maid of honor, then parents' toasts, Bentleys, Carsons. I asked Emily, "Am I giving a toast?" She blinked.
We didn't really put you down for one, Mom. We didn't want too many speeches. You're walking in with us. That's better." Only I wasn't. Turns out they had arranged for some big dramatic entrance with the bridal party and the 2 sets of rich parents flanking the couples like royalty. I was family row, pew 3. The mother's dance? Lauren and Mark requested to dance with their fathers and their mothers. I was told, "We'll do something with you at the reception, Mom. Don't make this a thing." By the wedding day, I was literally praying in the shower. "Please, God, give me enough grace to smile through this without embarrassing them or myself." I put on my pale blue dress, nothing flashy, grandma appropriate, did my makeup, curled my hair. I slipped the 2 envelopes into my clutch, one with Jason's name, one with Emily's, each for $1 million. Each representing decades of sacrifice, of saying no to myself so I could say yes later. I walked into that ballroom trying to be proud. Then I saw my seat, and I heard my daughter say, "You're just a pensioner. They're rich and can give us more than you, so you sit by the servants." Something broke. Not in the dramatic, screaming, throw a chair way that people imagine. It broke quietly, like a final thread snapping. I went to that ugly little table by the kitchen door, sat down, and pulled out the envelopes. I opened them carefully, because old habits die hard. Then I tore the checks in half, then in quarters, then in eighths. I smoothed the little scraps on the chair where they'd sat me, like white petals for a funeral. Mine. The funeral of the mother I had been for them. Nobody saw me. The servers were rushing past, the DJ was testing sound, people were arriving and hugging and laughing. I slipped out of the ballroom unnoticed, walked to my car, and drove home. The whole drive, my hands shook on the steering wheel. I didn't cry. Not yet. At home, I poured myself a glass of iced tea, sat at my kitchen table, and opened my laptop. If my kids had shown me anything that day, it's that they saw me purely in terms of what I was worth to them. So I decided to redefine that worth. To them, 0. The next morning, I called my financial advisor, Eric. He's a quiet man in his 40s, the kind of guy who gets excited about spreadsheets. "Eric," I said, "I need to change my estate plan completely, and I want to set up some new things. How soon can I come in?" He asked if everything was okay. "Not for them," I said, "but I'm about to be just fine." I spent the next few days pulling everything together. Account statements, old will, beneficiary designations. I had an old will from when the kids were teenagers, everything to be split between Jason and Emily. It was simple, assuming they'd grow up to be decent people. We all make assumptions. At the lawyer's office a week later, I laid it all out. "I want to disinherit my children," I told the attorney, a woman named Maria. "Not because I'm confused or being manipulated, because I have documented ongoing emotional abuse and financial entitlement from them and their in-laws, and I don't want my life's work going to people who see me as trash." She raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots from the group chat. The "she's just a pensioner" line. The seating chart with my name scribbled in at the back. The text my daughter sent during the wedding. Then I slid across the table a printout of my account balances. She blinked. "You've done very well for yourself." "Yes, and nobody knows. My children think I can barely afford my HOA dues, which is why they parked me by the toilets." We drafted a brand new will. Jason and Emily each got $1, not out of spite, but so there'd be no question it wasn't an oversight. The bulk of my estate, house, retirement accounts, brokerage, would be split between a scholarship fund for kids from my high school who wanted to study STEM, a trust for any grandchildren, structured so their parents couldn't touch a cent, 2 charities I love, one for foster kids, one for financial literacy programs. I also set up a living trust for myself with a corporate trustee. I made sure it would be very, very hard for anyone to contest it. Then I made one more move. I created a separate letter to be delivered after my death to Jason and Emily. In it, I calmly explained why. I attached copies of their own words, their own decisions.
I explained exactly how much money had been on those torn-up checks. I told them I hoped, sincerely, that the story of how they'd treated their pensioner mother at their wedding might someday help them raise their own children differently. When it was done, Maria asked, "Do you want to tell them any of this now?" I smiled. "Oh, I fully intend to." Because here's the thing. For people like Diane and Patricia, and apparently my children, money is the only language they truly understand. I'd tried love, I'd tried support, they chose contempt. Time to speak their language. Revenge, people think, is yelling, throwing things, public scenes. At 60, you learn the most devastating revenge is done slowly, quietly, with paperwork. First, I went no contact. Not a dramatic message, not a big speech. I simply didn't call. When Emily texted a group photo from their honeymoon, I reacted with a thumbs up and nothing else. When Jason sent a mass text thanking everyone for coming to our beautiful wedding, I said, "I'm glad you had the wedding you wanted. I left early due to seating. Take care. Mom." Nothing more. 2 weeks later, Emily called. I let it go to voicemail. "Mom, I don't know what your problem is. You left without saying goodbye? People asked where you were. It was embarrassing. You're still mad about the table? Seriously? You should be grateful they even invited your work friends. Call me back." I didn't. A month later, Jason emailed. Like we were colleagues. "Mom, look, Em says you're mad about the seating thing. We just had a lot of people to fit in and the planners made choices. You know we love you, but you're being a little childish about this. Diane and Patricia spent a lot on the wedding and they needed to be up front. Can we move past this now? We're thinking about starting to look for a house and could really use some family unity right now. Jay." Family unity. Right. I replied, "Jason, I heard your priorities clearly when your sister told me I'm just a pensioner and your in-laws are more valuable. I left your gift on the chair where you had me seated. I'm focusing on my own life now. Wishing you well. Mom." He didn't respond, but I know my son. Curiosity eats him alive. Within a few hours, I got a flurry of texts from Emily. "What gift? Mom, are you serious? You left early and left some kind of note or something? What did you do?" I put my phone face down and smiled. Let them stew. Now, about the co-mothers-in-law. If it were just my kids being ignorant, I might have chalked it up to youth and stupidity. But I had watched, over 3 years, as Diane and Patricia deliberately undermined me, lied about me, and used their money to buy my children's loyalty. There was the time Diane told Lauren, in front of me, "We're helping them with a down payment, of course. I mean, someone has to." Then she looked at me and added, "You're doing what you can, I'm sure." There was the time Patricia told Emily, "Honey, guilt is a tool poor people use to control their kids. You don't owe anyone your life just because they birthed you." I sat there, sipping my coffee, thinking about the nights I'd graded papers at the kitchen table while Emily slept on my lap because I couldn't afford to call in sick. People like that never think you'll do anything. They assume you're powerless. They forget you've been watching. I tutor a few kids in math on the side, even in retirement. One of them, Ethan, happens to be the son of a waitress who works part-time at one of the Carson dental offices and also at a restaurant the Bentleys invested in. People talk to waitresses. People talk around service staff. They never imagine those words will go anywhere. Over time, just chatting with Ethan's mom before sessions, I started hearing things. Employees being paid under the table to avoid benefits, tips being pooled and then mysteriously shrinking, overtime hours
adjusted in the system. None of it was my direct business. But then I heard Patricia at a brunch laugh about how we keep labor costs down and how if people are too dumb to read their pay stubs, that's not my problem. I am a math teacher. Payroll is math. I asked Ethan's mom later if her checks ever seemed off. She hesitated, then admitted she thought so, but she couldn't risk her job. Her husband was between work, they had 2 kids. I told her, very calmly, if I could help you document everything, quietly, would you want to look into it? She bit her lip, then nodded.
I helped her set up a little system. She'd bring me her pay stubs, texts from her manager, copies of schedules. I built a spreadsheet and showed her how her hours and pay should look. Over 6 months, we gathered enough discrepancies to make my skin crawl. The Bentley's restaurant had similar issues, servers claiming they never actually saw the full amount of tips that had gone through the POS. I didn't march into their offices. I didn't confront them in a parking lot. I helped Ethan's mom and a couple of her coworkers file complaints with the Department of Labor, the State Workforce Commission, and the IRS hotline for suspected payroll tax fraud. I told them to list themselves, not me. I was just a friend helping with the math. And then I stepped back. Whatever happened, happened. Actions have consequences. Or at least they should. 3 months after the wedding, the group texts from my kids slowed down. I watched from the distance as the shine started to wear off their perfect life. They'd wanted a big house immediately, something worthy of their new double family status. The plan, as I'd overheard, was that the Bentleys and Carsons would handle it. Then an investigation notice hit the Carsons' offices, then the restaurant. Ethan's mom told me that suddenly everyone at work was panicking. Meetings with lawyers, whispers about back pay, complaints about entitled staff who didn't appreciate what they were given. I made sure to remind her, you're not doing anything wrong. You are asking to be paid what you earned. That's all. Legal consequences are their own kind of revenge. I didn't need to embellish. Meanwhile, Jason and Emily realized that rich in-laws didn't mean endless money forever. The Bentleys had to cover part of their partner's legal issues. They were all tangled together financially. Suddenly, that big down payment became maybe in a few years when things settle. Lauren lost her job at one of the dealerships when they restructured. Mark got his hours cut. And my kids, who had floated on the illusion of endless wealth, were finally standing on their own feet. They did not like the feeling. Emily called first. This time, I answered. "Hi," I said. I was trimming my rose bushes. The sun felt good on my back. "Mom," she said, and her voice had that brittle edge it gets when she's about to ask for something. "We haven't really talked since the wedding." "We haven't," I agreed. She sighed. "Look, I know you're still mad, but we've had a lot going on. Things with Mark's parents' businesses are complicated." "That happens when you underpay people," I said mildly. She hesitated. "You heard about that? News travels." She gave a little laugh. "Yeah, well, anyway, we're trying to buy a house. The market is insane, and Mark's parents can't help as much as they thought because of all the legal stuff. And I was thinking, you own your house outright, right?" "Yes." "And you always said you'd help us, get settled. Maybe co-sign or, gift part of your house equity? A HELOC or something?" She said it like she was ordering at Starbucks. I leaned on my shovel. "Emily," I said, "do you remember where I sat at your wedding?" Silence. "By the kitchen, next to the restrooms. Your mother-in-law sat beside you. Do you remember what you told me when I called you?" She inhaled sharply. "Mom, I was stressed, okay? It was a crazy day. I don't remember exactly." "Let me help your memory. You told me, and I quote, 'You're just a pensioner, and they're rich and can give us much more than you. So you sit next to the servants.'
Her voice went small. You're really going to throw that in my face? No, I said. I'm going to let it guide my decisions. You told me where I stand in your life. I am merely agreeing with you. Your priorities changed. Mine have now. She was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, softer, do you know how much Diane and Patricia were going to help us with before all this? It was a lot. I have a rough idea. I'm sure it hurts to lose imagined money. It wasn't imagined. Neither was the money in the 2 wedding checks I tore up on my chair before I left. She froze. I could hear it in the silence. What? She whispered. I left your gift on my seat. You or the staff must have cleaned it up. 2 checks. There was one for you and one for your brother.
How much? Her voice was almost breathless. $1 million each. She made us sound like she'd been slapped. That's not funny, she said. You're not funny. I'm not joking, I said. I've worked and invested for 40 years. I'm worth around $10 million. I wrote you and Jason each a check for $1 million as a wedding present. Then you told me I was just a pensioner and to sit by the servants, so I tore them up. You're lying, she said, but it came out weak. You can believe what you like, I replied, but whether you believe it or not, the result is the same. You made it clear my value to you was based on perceived wealth. You thought I had none, so you treated me like nothing. Now that you know I do, it's far too late. Tears hit her voice then. Mom, that's insane. You can't punish us like this. We were stressed. People say things. You're our mother. I was your mother when you needed homework help, rides, money, emotional support. You replaced me at your own wedding with 2 women who own companies and underpay their staff. You made a hierarchy. I'm just accepting my place in it. We were wrong, she blurted. Okay, we were wrong. Can't you just... No, I said gently. There are some bells you can't unring. I don't wish you harm. I hope you figure out your life. But my days of being the backup plan, the invisible support, the punchline pensioner, those are over. She started sobbing. Mom, we need help. We're drowning in debt from the wedding. The houses are all going up in price. We thought we'd have backing. Please, where are your kids? And I was your mother when you humiliated me in front of 300 people, I said. You have 2 sets of in-laws with companies. They can give you much more than I ever could, remember? Go to them. They can't right now, she cried. I let the silence stretch. That, I said finally, is not my problem. Jason came next. He didn't call. He showed up. I was on my porch, reading, when his truck pulled into my driveway like he still lived there. He stomped up the steps. He looked so much like his father when he's angry, it hurt to see. Mom, what the hell? Hello, Jason, I said, marking my page. You told Em you tore up $1 million checks. What kind of sick mind game is that? The honest kind, I said. T? He stared at me. You're serious, he said slowly. I am, I said. Would you like numbers? I can show you the account balances if it will help you understand I'm not bluffing. His mouth opened, closed. You're rich? And you let Lauren's parents pay for everything? No one let them, I said. They insisted. They also insisted I was too poor and too tasteless to be involved. I simply didn't correct their assumptions. He ran a hand through his hair. Why wouldn't you tell us? Why would I asked, so you could decide if I was worth basic respect? He flinched. That's not fair, he muttered. I raised an eyebrow. Fair, like seating your mother by the restrooms on your wedding day while your fiancé's mother sits next to you? His jaw tightened. The planner did the chart, Mom. And you saw it, I said, and you didn't change it. He didn't have an answer to that. He sat down heavily on the porch step. Lauren's parents are in deep crap, he said eventually. Between the investigation and some other deals going south, they're not nearly as liquid as everyone thought. We're paying off the wedding ourselves now. We're on the hook for most of it. That must be stressful, I said, and I meant it. Debt is a heavy weight. He looked up at me, eyes a little wild. Mom, we were stupid, okay? We thought you'd be taken care of. You always seemed content with your little life. We just wanted to move up, he grimaced. Diane said you'd be fine with whatever, that you didn't care about appearances. She was right, I said. I care about how people are treated, not about how things look in photos. He exhaled hard. Look, we need help, just short term, a loan, co-sign a mortgage, something. Lauren lost her job. The Bentleys can't help like they promised. I thought you'd want grandkids growing up in a nice neighborhood. I looked at my son, really looked at him. Grown man, degree, job, cute wife, and still somehow like a teenager trying to dodge responsibility. Jason, what lesson would it teach your future children if I bailed you out of a problem you walked into with your eyes open? That their grandmother loves them, he shot back. Or that they can treat people like dirt and still get rewarded? Is that what you want? He stared at me. This is about your feelings, he said bitterly. You're willing to sabotage our entire future because you're upset about a chair. I laughed then, a short, sharp thing. This isn't about a chair, I said. It's about the fact that, given the choice between honoring the woman who raised you and flattering the people with bigger checkbooks, you chose the latter without blinking. It's about the fact that you only care about my finances now that your golden safety net has frayed. He shook his head. You're being heartless. No, I said quietly. I'm finally being fair to myself. I let him sit with that. Then I added, because I am not entirely without mercy, my money is going to help people who would have slept on the floor before putting their mother by the toilets. He flinched again. Scholarships, charities, your future kids, through a trust you won't be able to touch. But you and your sister, you made your choices. He stood abruptly. So that's it, he said. You're cutting us off. I'm letting you be the adults you insisted you were, I said. You have jobs, you have spouses, you have wealthy in-laws who, even with legal trouble, are still better off than most people. You'll survive. You might even grow up. His eyes shone, but he blinked the tears away angrily. Don't expect us to come running when you're old and need help, he spat. I smiled, not unkindly. Jason, I learned today that I can pay for any care I could ever need in any facility I like and tip every nurse handsomely, I said. I will be fine. He opened his mouth, closed it, then turned and stomped back to his truck. He didn't slam the door. That, for my son, is progress. Word of my secret wealth got around the family faster than any flu. Not because I bragged, because my children, in their shock and anger, ran to the only people who still validated their worldview, Diane and Patricia. I wasn't there, obviously, but I can picture that conversation. How could she not tell you? Diane would have said, outraged, not because of the morality, but because she'd missed out on the chance to ingratiate herself. Patricia would have pursed her lips. It's deceptive, she'd say. Very manipulative, using money like that. The irony of them calling anyone manipulative could power the Texas grid. A week later, I received a group email. To me, from Diane, CCing both kids, both spouses, and Patricia. Linda, we've all talked, and we feel your behavior has been extremely hurtful and unfair. Keeping your finances a secret, then springing this on the kids is toxic. They are devastated. As fellow mothers, we cannot understand how you could choose to punish your own children like this over a misunderstanding about seeding. We stepped up and gave them the kind of wedding you never could, and we have always encouraged them to maintain a relationship with you despite your negativity. We think it would be best if you apologized and agreed to support them moving forward, especially now that we are dealing with some business challenges. Family should help family. Diane and Patricia. I read it twice. Then I opened a new email and hit Reply All. Diane, Patricia, thank you for your email. I appreciate you clarifying your positions so clearly. I did not spring anything on my children. I simply declined to correct your repeated assumptions that I was poor and therefore irrelevant. You chose to treat me as lesser based solely on perceived income. My children chose to align themselves with that worldview. I am under no obligation to finance adults who have told me in their own words that their priorities have changed and that I am just a pensioner who belongs with the servants. You say family should help family. I did for 30 years. I helped by raising them, feeding them, educating them, and loving them. You helped by writing checks. They made their choice. Going forward, my financial resources will be used to provide scholarships for students from working-class families who show respect and grit, support charities that help kids who don't have the luxury of multiple sets of parents, set up trusts for any grandchildren I may have, which will be structured to prevent parental misuse.
I wish you all the very best in resolving your business challenges and your relationships with your employees. As for apologies, I have already given mine to myself for allowing this dynamic to go on as long as it did. Regards, Linda, just a pensioner. I hit send. Then I made myself a cup of tea and turned off my phone for the rest of the day. Life didn't suddenly become a fairy tale after that. I still woke up some nights aching for my kids, as they used to be. I still caught myself wanting to text them little things, then remembering the cold calculation in Emily's voice, "They're rich and can give us much more than you." Grief is grief, even when the person you're grieving is still alive. But there was also peace. I started saying yes to things I'd put off. A weekend trip to Santa Fe with a friend, a nicer pair of shoes that didn't come from the clearance rack, a donation to the school's robotics team that made the advisor cry. I also started investing in people who actually seemed to give a damn. Ethan's mom, for one. With the back pay she eventually got from the settlement with the dental group and the restaurant, she managed to pay off her credit cards and start an emergency fund. When she shyly asked if I thought she could ever do that investing thing, I helped her open a small Roth IRA and explain dollar cost averaging. Watching her eyes light up when she realized she didn't have to stay broke forever, that felt better than any hypothetical McMansion Jason and Emily might have bought with my money. My neighbor's granddaughter, Mia, started coming over after school for help with algebra. When she got into a STEM summer camp and cried because she couldn't afford the tuition, I paid it anonymously. These kids would have sat me at their head table if they'd had one. As for the in-laws' businesses, the investigations dragged on, as they do. From what I hear, they had to pay a lot in fines and back wages. A few locations closed. Their social circle, so carefully curated, started to whisper. The phrase, "they skimmed from their own employees," doesn't play well at country club luncheons, apparently. Actions. Consequences. As for my kids, contact became sporadic. Emily sends the occasional photo, her and Mark at some brewery, her new rescue dog, a selfie with a caption like, "Hope you're doing okay." I usually respond with, "Glad you're well, Mom." Jason went quiet for a while. Then recently I got a message. "Mom, Lauren's pregnant. I know things are messed up, but I wanted you to know before everyone else. Jay." I stared at that message for a long time. A part of me wanted to melt, to rush over with onesies and nursery paint samples, to forget everything. Another part of me remembered scraps of paper on a banquet chair and the smell of kitchen grease and bathroom cleaner as my reserved sign wobbled in the air-conditioned draft. I texted back, "Congratulations. I hope you both grow into the kind of parents who will never make their child
feel like their value depends on money. Mom. He didn't reply. But a week later, I got an email from him, not asking for money, just updating me about doctor appointments, about how scared he was and excited. It wasn't an apology, not exactly, but it was something. I'm not naive. I know that if Jason and Emily found out tomorrow that I'd changed my will again in their favor, some of their contrition might evaporate. That's why I haven't. My lawyer has the documents. My trustee is in place. The money will go where it should. If my kids manage, over years, not weeks or months, to show consistent empathy, respect, and growth, I might consider helping in non-destructive ways. Maybe a 529 plan for the grandbaby. Maybe some home repairs. But the days of them seeing me as an ATM with feelings they can ignore, those are done. People have asked me, mostly the few friends I've told, if I regret it. If I regret tearing up those $1,000,000 checks. If I regret disinheriting my own children. If I feel guilty. I tell them the truth. I regret raising my children to believe love meant never facing consequences. I regret not setting boundaries earlier when the first little comments started. I regret lowering my expectations of basic respect because I was so desperate to be included. But the checks? The will? No.
Those I don't regret at all. My revenge wasn't about ruining their lives. It was about finally refusing to let them ruin mine. It was about making sure that the fruits of 40 years of hard work and compound interest don't end up in the pockets of people who see pensioners and servants as the same kind of disposable. If my children ever truly understand what they lost that night, not the money, but their mother's trust, maybe they'll become better people. If they don't, well, somewhere 10 or 20 years from now, a kid whose parents never sat at the head table will get a letter saying they've earned a scholarship from a fund named after a math teacher named Linda. They'll walk onto a campus their parents never dreamed of. They'll sit in a classroom and open a notebook, and maybe, just maybe, they'll think of all the people who quietly believed in them. And my children? They'll know that could have been them. That's the thing about revenge at 60. You stop wanting to watch the explosion. You're content knowing the fuse is lit, the blast is measured, and the right structures are the ones that fall. And sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't screaming or throwing drinks or public scenes. It's a quiet old woman in a pale blue dress, sitting by the toilets, tearing up 2 pieces of paper, and changing the entire story of where her life's work will go.
So, another story of my grandmother has end, and be clicking here, you will have when more such stories.